Every Sunday, Madge McGrory had two main jobs: stay out from underfoot and cause no trouble. These were the conditions her Aunt Jean had made when she took Madge in after her mother had died. Cause no trouble meant making herself breakfast, cold cereal because Aunt Jean, who worked late-night shifts at a diner, couldn't stand the smell of cooking, and getting herself off to school in the morning. Madge didn't mind this. She used to get up early to help her mother with the twins and to walk Frankie to school. As Roosevelt had said, everyone had to pitch in to end the Great Depression, old and young alike. The WPA had given her dad a job when he needed it, so Madge didn't mind doing her part. "My little organizer," her mother would call her as she rallied her brothers to order. "Bossy," the nuns called her. It was easier now that she only had herself to worry about, although she did miss the smell of her mother's oatmeal cooking on the cast-iron stove and Frankie's company. Stay out from underfoot meant sleeping on the pull-down Murphy bed and keeping her clothes stored in the kitchen pantry and her boots in the stove. Aunt Jean meant it about no cooking. And clearing out on Sundays when Aunt Jean had her boyfriend Tony over. Tony worked the morning shift at his family's bakery on Carmine Street, so the only time he and Aunt Jean could find together was on Sunday. Madge understood, didn't she? Madge didn't exactly, but it seemed little enough to do for Aunt Jean, who had taken her in and kept her off the streets and out of some place like St. Vincent's Home for Boys, where Frankie and the twins had gone when their father had gone to pieces. When she woke up on this Sunday and saw that a wedge of sunlight had reached the radiator, Madge knew she'd better get up before Tony arrived. But she squeezed her eyes shut and tried to get back to the dream she'd been having. In her dream, her mother had been leaning over the fire escape, calling her home for dinner. The delicious smell of her mother's Irish stew had been wafting out of the tenement window, and Madge, in the middle of a game of ring-a-levio, had stopped the game by calling, "Ollie, ollie, oxen free," releasing all her teammates from jail, Mrs. Murphy's front stoop. As she'd turned to run for home, a plume of steam had come up out of the sewer grate and blocked her way. Somehow, she had known with the certainty of dream knowledge that she mustn't step into that pillar of steam, that it was as off-block as the boundaries of ring-a-levio, that it was as bad as stepping on a crack and breaking your mother's back. And sure enough, a man had stepped out of it. Madge opened her eyes to the hiss of steam coming from the radiator. It was usually a comforting noise, but now it reminded her of the man emerging from the steam on the street, and she didn't want to remember him. She got up and made her bed, although why it mattered when it was going to be folded up against the wall, Madge couldn't have told you, only that her mother had always told her to make her bed every morning, and so she did, and folded it back into its cupboard and latched it shut, reflecting as she did that if she could have folded herself back into the Murphy bed, she would have been well and truly out from underfoot. Instead, she made a plan for the day. She didn't have her brothers to organize, but she could still take control of her own time. Morning in the library, lunch in the park, afternoon, well, she'd think of something. After all, she was in Manhattan. Back when she lived in Brooklyn, she and Frankie used to stand on the roof of their building and pretend the skyline of Manhattan was a magical kingdom. "We'll go live there someday," Madge had promised Frankie. She opened the icebox and took out a paper sack of the uneaten sandwich halves Aunt Jean always brought back from the diner. It made Madge feel a little funny, eating the leftovers of strangers. Why horseradish on pastrami? She would wonder. Who orders corned beef without mustard? Why would anyone ever eat liverwurst? But if she didn't have to buy her own lunch, she might be able to afford a movie. Suspicion was playing at Radio City Music Hall, She'd seen it, but Joan Fontaine was her favorite actress, so she wouldn't mind seeing it again.